There are some pitchers that we want to return to the Reds bullpen in 2024, and there are some we don't. We'll tell you who on today's Locked On Reds.
You are Locked On Reds, your daily Cincinnati Reds podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Reds, your daily source for all things Cincinnati Reds. I'm Stephen Offenbaker, and he's Jeff Carr, and we love baseball. We love the Cincinnati Reds. We've taken our love of the game, and we have turned that love of the game into information for you. Locked On Reds is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. On today's podcast, we're going to dig into the Reds bullpen and decide who we think should stay and who we think should go for the 2024 season. Today's episode is brought to you by Sweeper. Swing for the fences on Sweeper picks, and you could win up to 100 times your money. Download the Sweeper app and use the promo code Locked On, and you'll get up to $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. Currently operational in over 30 states. Check out Sleeper today. All right, Jeff, the bullpen. We talked about it a little bit in yesterday's show. We touched on a couple themes that we were going to carry over into today. But a good way to just look at this bullpen is let's take the list and decide who we think they should keep and who we think they should get rid of to create some opportunities for upgrades. The who stays list very easily starts with the closer, starts with the guy that led the team in saves. It starts with your dude, Alexis Diaz.
Dude is the bullpen ace. I mean, it's a very easy decision with him. You talk about some of the big time bullpen ace closer guys that hit the free agent market. We mentioned Josh Hader's just like a passing kind of like, hey, how about that one? He's due to probably make somewhere around $17 million a year. That's the kind of production that you get from Alexis Diaz. I really think that Diaz is in the same conversation as Josh Hader. He's in the same conversation as his brother, Edwin Diaz. Alexis Diaz is one of the 5 best closers, 5 best bullpen aces in Major League Baseball. So obviously, he is the dude that stays, number one guy that stays in this bullpen list. And this bullpen, we've talked about it multiple different times this past season. Everydayers will know how much that we love this bullpen. They played so well, pitched so fantastically, and one of the big reasons that the Reds stayed in the playoff race as long as they did, and Alexis Diaz was reason numero uno that this bullpen was good.
Yeah, 37 saves in 71 appearances, a 3.07 ERA, 67.1 innings pitched. Probably, Jeff, a little bit overused. I think that there were times they pushed him to his limits, but still, even at that 11.5 strikeouts per 9, he did walk 4.8 per 9. I'd like to see that number improve a little bit heading into next year, but I think some of that could be attributed back to that overuse, but you're absolutely right. Alexis Diaz, ace number 1 of this bullpen. And if we're talking about guys that are locks to remain in this bullpen that we want to see back, I think for me, the next name on the list is Lucas Sims. We touched on this in yesterday's show. He pitched in 20 more games than his career high coming off of an injury and still yet managed to keep his ERA at 3.10, 67 appearances. He got 3 saves in 61 innings, strikeouts per 9, 10.6. walks 5.8. He's another one I would like to see to improve that. But with the correct amount of usage, I think he'll be just fine.
I agree. And I mean, you're talking about a dude that really knows how to just pitch in big moments. It felt like he was very good at stopping other teams from scoring with guys in scoring position. He was fantastic when it came to putting the ball in the glove of his defense. His BABIP against him was 212, despite the fact that he was not very much a ground ball pitcher. He only had 23% ground ball rate, a theme that we will talk about as we move throughout the show. Both he and Alexis Diaz, neither one was a great ground ball pitcher, but they got their outs. They kept the doors shut. Lucas Sims, it felt like he was constantly coming in with the bases loaded or 2 guys in scoring position, and then the other team had no runs scored. A phenomenal year for him, and I believe that he continues it next season.
So this next guy on the list, lock, not a lock, I don't know. I'm interested to hear what you think, but we're going to talk about Ian Gibaut for just a minute. Led the team in appearances at 74, pitched 75 and 2/3 innings during the 2023 baseball season. His numbers, 8.2 strikeouts per 9, 3.3 on his base, his walks per 9. So he pitched great. He pitched in a way that was unexpected. I think you're right. We probably should have at least considered him in the conversation for, most surprising Red of 2023. But I'm always leery of relief pitchers when you use them this way. The following year, we find guys come out and they forgot how to pitch. They're not able to put it together. I'm a little worried what it's going to look like when he fires it back up out in Goodyear for 2024. Is Ian Gibaut a guy you consider a lock for this bullpen?
Well, firstly, let's pat ourselves on the back here because we went officially 6 minutes into a show about the bullpen without me saying the words relief pitching is a fickle thing. But relief pitching is a fickle thing. And the way that he kind of profiles as a relief pitcher, his ERA, he got a little bit lucky last year. The xFIP, the expected fielding independent pitcher. We talk about this a lot as a good predictor for what a pitcher's ERA should look like in the future. And because his strikeout rate was a little bit below league average, and because he didn't keep the ball on the ground very often, it was seen as a little bit lucky. 3.33 ERA probably should have been more closer to 4, but still, I think that Ian Gibaut should stay. I agree that he is a guy that you can kind of rely on. Now, the caveat is I want that to be as a middle relief guy. Like he is the kind of the benchmark that I want the front office to look at and say, we need to have better pitchers in this bullpen than him. Not necessarily because he is not good, but because I think he overachieved on what he gave the Reds this season. Felt like there was a little bit of luck involved. And I want to see the Reds kind of go better than Ian Gibaut for their other setup man that follow Lucas Sims.
All right, the next guy on the list is kind of interesting because I didn't really see the comparison until you pointed it out in show prep, but that is just how good Fernando Cruz was really for the Reds in 2023 and where you put him in this bullpen hierarchy. I think he's an up and comer. He's on the rise and his numbers would support considering him, not being the closer, but we may have a setup man in Fernando Cruz in 2024.
For every bit of luck that Ian Gibaut had, Fernando Cruz had the opposite. He had bad luck. In fact, the statistic I use for Ian Gibaut, xFIP, Fernando Cruz had the best xFIP in the bullpen, and that includes Alexis Diaz. Alexis Diaz xFIP was 4.2, Fernando Cruz 3.7. So yeah, you're going to see Fernando Cruz and you're going to see an ERA of 5. You're going to be like, that guy wasn't good. You'd be wrong because he had a better strikeout rate than Alexis Diaz, a better walk rate than Alexis Diaz, and he kept the ball in the ballpark. Now, he's once again a guy that needs to keep the ball on the ground a little bit more, but the way that he was able to pitch and that split finger changeup that he has is absolutely phenomenal and just absolutely just baffles dudes at the plate. Like, he is a dude I want to see back next year, and maybe even more so. I think that he's better than Ian Gibaut. I think he's like right there on the cusp of standing toe-to-toe with Lucas Sims.
Listen, you look at Fernando Cruz's numbers, Jeff, and strikeouts per 9. He was right at 2 strikeouts per 9 better than Alexis Diaz while being 1 walk less per 9 than Alexis Diaz. So, I mean, if you throw out the ERAs, Fernando Cruz probably pitched a little bit better at times than Alexis Diaz. So that makes for a great 1-2 punch. Now, you either can consider Fernando Cruz as being a setup guy, an 8th inning man for the Reds in 2024, or as we know, as much as David Bell tries, Alexis Diaz can't pitch every day, and you need somebody else to close on those other nights when Diaz isn't available. I think Fernando Cruz might be your guy in 2024 to be closer B.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree on that. And then the last lock And it's funny because we've said that, one of the things the Reds need to go get this offseason is bullpen pitching. And here we are giving you 5 locks, but our 5th lock to return to this bullpen next year, Sam Moll. He's under team control. And ever since he was traded for, has pitched absolutely amazing for the Reds.
No, he has. And he's another one that, another trade that Nick Kroll made that has paid off. He was a great addition to the bullpen in 2023. And I look forward to having him here for an entire season. Strikeouts per 9. He averaged 8 strikeouts per 9 innings while with the Reds. He walked 4. I really would like to see these walks per 9 under 4.
Yes.
Which is why I like Fernando Cruz. He came in just short of that at 3.8. So there's some room for improvement there, even for Moll. But I think, as a lefty out there in the bullpen, he's going to be valuable, especially when we get into the next segment about what we think the Reds need to do for additions.
Yeah, Sam Moll definitely fits the profile as a bullpen lock for us. Darth Moll is our 5th lock of the bullpen. But Steve, that means there are a couple of guys that we do not believe should return to the pen. We'll tell you who those are coming up next. Before we get into that, I want to tell you that today's episode is brought to you by Sleeper Picks. The playoffs are down to the League Championship Series stage, which means the clock is ticking to get in on your chance to win 100 times your cash on daily fantasy baseball. Baseball's never been more exciting than it is now, with studs like Bryce Harper, Corbin Carroll, and even the young guy over there in the Rangers, Evan Carter, manning the diamond. You can pick those guys. You can pick your favorite stats and just pick more or less on things like homers, strikeouts, hits, runs scored, all that great stuff, stolen bases. And you can win up to 100 times your payout on Sleeper. Get your picks right. You could win big. And in fact, thinking of win big, who's going to help you win big? Nick Castellanos himself, future Mr. October, because he's absolutely kicking butt on the diamond. I think I'd smash more on those homers every game he plays in, because he has just been sending all kinds of deep drives out of the park. And if you think Castellanos would be a good guy to help you win 100 times your money, you need to check out Sleeper Picks. Plus, when you sign up, use promo code LOCKEDON, and you'll get up to $100 match on your first deposit. So get 100 times your cash and get up to $100 match on your first deposit with Sleeper. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. Remember, that promo code is Locked On. Thanks as always for making Locked On Reds your first listen every single day. Every dayers coming up on the next Locked On Reds podcast, the return of Aloha Fridays. We'll be live with you as you drive the ship. We're going to talk Reds with you. We're going to look at memories of this season. We're going to look at big what-if moments, what could have happened, and some thoughts that you might have on bullpen additions and things like that. That's at 1 p.m. Eastern time on Friday, the first Aloha Friday of the off season. And you can join the Locked On Reds Insiders with me, where you get breaking news, scoops, inside information, and exclusive content delivered directly to your phone. And you can even chat with me on a one-on-one text basis. I am excited to have you be part of the Locked On Reds Insiders. Join Locked On Reds Insiders now by texting Go Reds to 513-597-0944 or follow the link in the description of today's episode. All right, Steve, we gave the 5 locks. We gave the guys who are returning, the guys that we want to see back in the bullpen next year. It means there are a couple of guys that are be leaving us. Can't hear you.
Well, we have to turn off the mute button first is what we have to do. Good grief. All right, listen, there's a lot that goes into the consideration of making rooms for upgrades in this bullpen. It's more than just performance on the field. You also have to take into account if a player has options, if the team will be able to keep him for organizational depth versus having to, basically release him in order to free up the spot. We did that, but we didn't put a whole lot of regard into whether or not the Reds would have to cut a guy or if they had options. We're just looking to upgrade this bullpen. So for me, that conversation, and probably the hardest one in this group to talk about, is Derek Law, because when you look at his numbers When you look at what Derek Law did for the Reds, he managed to get into 54 games for the Reds in 2023 and through 55 innings. His numbers weren't horrible. For the ERA crowd, he sat at 3.60, which is respectable for a bullpen pitcher in Major League Baseball. And you look at his strikeouts per nine, 7.4. Here's where it starts to jump off the rails for me. His walks per nine was 4.3 compared to that 7.4 strikeout rate. I feel like while he was okay, he is definitely below that line of guys that we want to say, here's the cutoff. Here's the cutoff where we need to upgrade from. He's below that line. So for me, he's the first guy that's an odd man out. Maybe you could trade him in the offseason in a package to try and make something happen for an outfielder. But I don't see him as being a part of this Reds bullpen in 2024.
No, and the other thing that Derek Law really has working against him, he just was not good at keeping the ball on the ground. It's a theme that we continue to talk about. 38.4% ground ball rate. His xFIP says he was getting pretty lucky with that ERA of 3.68. His xFIP was 4.87. And now he gave the Reds some very admirable performances. He was able to pitch in some key spots, and we were able to, sing the Cubs fought the law and the law won, or something like that. But when it comes to Derek Law moving forward, yes, he is a guy that I think that the Reds can go out and upgrade in their bullpen. I'm with you. I think I like the idea of like seeing if he could work in a package deal for some sort of trade or something like that. Another guy that we're looking at is probably at least an odd man out of the Major League bullpen is Alex Young. Now, the caveat here is he does have an option, so he can be depth within the organization.
And that's really important. That's important.
Yes. They don't have to move on from him in the terms of like getting rid of him. They can send him down to AAA and be a very key rotational piece. You're a very, as in, rotating from Louisville to Cincinnati and being an extra arm for them when they need it. But we're talking about a dude that he's a lefty pitcher that had reverse splits against lefties. Lefties actually hit him better than right-handed pitchers did. And for a bullpen that needs to prioritize keeping the ball on the ground and things like that, he was actually better than some of these guys at that. But for the most part, you really need to see some better arms than that. They have a better lefty arm in Sam Moll.
Yeah, and listen, reverse splits aside, in 63 appearances for the Reds in 2023, his strikeouts per nine, 8.4, his walks per nine, 3.4. So he's kind of in that lane where you want a guy. And you can't have enough decent left-handed relief pitching in your back pocket. So if you've got an Alex Young sitting down at AAA, and it means that you've gone out and got another lefty, which we'll talk about coming up in the third segment, that's great organizational depth to have. That's a different feel than what this bullpen had this last season, because you were looking at the Louisville roster going, if another guy goes down, we joked often about them asking you to come pitch an inning or two. So this is a whole different narrative. And I think, again, when you talk about that line of upgrade versus not upgrade, there's better lefties you can go out there and get to have on your active roster for the entirety of the season. But Alex Young is a great, just in case. He's a great break glass in case of emergency guy down at Louisville for a team that is going to be fighting for a playoff spot.
And if that really is, and it should be the role that he fills next year, then he has a lot of value to this team. I just don't think that if you're talking about the best iteration of the bullpen on opening day, I don't think Alex Young should be a part of that. A very interesting one for me, somebody that's worth discussing here, Ben Lively, because Ben Lively really gave this team a lot of admirable innings. Now, that's not to say that he was like on fire here. He wasn't like super amazing. The xFIP said that he got a little bit unlucky with his ERA on the year, but overall, he was a pretty league average pitcher when it came to just about everything else. He was actually below league average when it came to striking people out, but he also limited the walks as well. Do you keep Ben Lively as a long relief type dude?
I'm really torn on this. Again, you talked about he didn't, blow you away with his strikeout numbers. 8 point, he averaged exactly 8 strikeouts per 9. The walk rate though was great. 2.5 walks per 9. That is great. I'll take that from every pitcher on this roster. Do you give him a roster spot? Do you make him your long man? It depends on the answer to this question. Do you think the Reds will go spend significant money and sign 3 really good relievers? Because that's really what we're talking about. This conversation has definitely created 2 slots for the Reds to go out and get free agent relief pitching. Would they spend to get a third? If they do the 3 $6 million men like we talked about this week, then maybe I'm willing to go ahead and try and put Ben Lively through waivers and see if there's any takers. I put Ben Lively out there and see if he'll accept a minor league assignment, or if we have to release him. If they're willing to spend for the upgrade, then it's not that big a loss. If they're not, then I think you want Ben Lively as your long guy in the rotation or in the bullpen.
And I also think too, like I'm going to add a caveat to this. If Ben Lively's your long man and you go out and you sign 2 relief pitchers and a starting pitcher, sign me up for that. I love that idea, because I think that there's an element of length that the bullpen missed last year. You could tell that David Bell was really trying to turn some guys into long men. He mentioned it early on in the season. He wanted guys to go multiple innings, things like that. There are just some guys that aren't that type of pitcher. And I think that when you have a guy that is like Ben Lively, I think that could be valuable. And sure, the strikeout rate you'd love to see come up, but I'm with you. The walk rate, very, very good. And he's a guy that I would be okay. Like if Brandon Williamson's kind of struggling through a start or something like that, you can bring him in and lock up 2 or 3 innings and not have to waste multiple bullpen guys on that outing. I think with this, and this also brings up a couple of names as well that Reds fans are familiar with because they saw them pitch a couple of years ago, that I just think kind of leaves them the odd men out for different reasons. Reiver Sanmartin and TJ Antone. Where do they kind of fall into this?
I think Reiver is going to be that organizational depth kind of guy. I think he'll be stashed down in Louisville and in a pinch come up. Now, he could change the narrative. He could pitch really great in AAA, and if he gets an opportunity in the majors, it's the what have you done for me lately effect. If he comes up and pitches well, it'll be hard to send him back down, but he's going to have to prove it. And I think to prove it, he'll start out in AAA to do it. The other name, though, the other guy we haven't talked about, and I'm sure there's some people that are already like, hey, but what about, and that guy's TJ Antone. And listen, I think TJ Antone is a phenomenal guy. He's been through a lot of adversity. He's battled back now from 2 Tommy Johns, but here's really the short answer, Jeff. He made it back to the big leagues after his 2nd Tommy John. That is amazing. 5 games later, he had arm problems, and I don't know that you can count on him to be anything. I don't know if he's going to be able to stick around and pitch in the major leagues, if his arm's going to hold up to it. There's too many question marks.
There would be zero surprise, and I almost expect to hear the news that he is retiring soon. There's no reporting on that. That's just speculation at this point for me. But elbow discomfort is that in and of itself is a positive spin on what probably his elbow was really feeling like whenever he came out of that outing, his final outing of the season. And I just don't know that you come out of elbow discomfort and you say, sure, he's going to be in good year when pitchers and catchers support ready to go. Like, I kind of feel like this is going to be the thing where TJ really looks in the mirror and just says, is this worth pushing through again and rehabbing again and coming back to see what I've got? Because who knows, maybe he comes back and then maybe after another 5 appearances, he has more elbow discomfort. So I think at this point, we're probably not counting on TJ Antone. We said this last season. We weren't really counting on TJ Antone at that point, and I think that only continues as we move into this offseason.
Well, this I know. Some of these players, Jeff, will make for great organizational depth. They're great players to stash in case you need them. But if the Reds are serious about making a postseason run in 2024, they're going to need to go out and get some upgrades in the bullpen. And coming up with these players out, there are a couple slots to fill now in the bullpen. We're going to tell you what type of pitcher the Reds should target next. You can follow us in between episodes. You can follow Jeff and I on X, Twitter, Elon online, whatever we're calling it. You can follow Jeff at Jeff Carr. That's Jeff with 3 F's. You can follow me at S Offenbaker. That's spelled with 2 F's. You can also follow the show at Locked On Red. Also, get into the Discord community. The link is down in the show description. Lots of great Reds conversation happens over there. There's also several other channels we've got cooking within our Discord community. There's a gaming channel. There is a Bengals channel for a football season if you want to get in there and chat about that. A lot of great conversation with a lot of great people. So join us today because we love talking all things with you. All right, Jeff, we've created a couple holes. By doing this, we have 2 slots for sure that the Reds need to go out and sign. Depending on what would happen with Ben Lively, there could be a 3rd spot, and you kind of hinted at that when we were talking about him there in the last segment. With those 2 slots, I think it's way too early to target and talk about specific guys. But looking at the numbers from 2023, there's definitely a type of pitcher that is needed in this Reds bullpen to really help put them on solid ground to make a postseason run for 2024.
Yeah, everydayers will know I've mentioned a couple of names, and the biggest reason that I mentioned those names is because they keep the ball on the ground. I've been saying this all episode. We've been saying this all episode of what Reds pitchers need to do. The bullpen last season had a ground ball rate of 39%. And you're saying, Jeff, why is that such a big deal? Because they play in Great American Ballpark, where if you put the ball in the air, you about got a 50-50 shot of hitting a homer. Like, it's just at this point, and the Reds bullpen actually, according to, some metrics, one of the metrics we look at for predictability on pitchers is homer to fly ball ratio, and league average is around 12 to 13%. The Reds bullpen was at 10%. So the bullpen as a whole kind of got lucky on the fly balls that they allowed and how far they really went. So you look at that and you say that might be a little bit different next year. So get some guys that keep the ball on the ground. That's really what they've got to prioritize in free agency. Whatever the names are and whoever they go after, that's where they need to start.
Well, that being said, then one name we have not talked about, and we did that on purpose to get into this segment, is the Reds' lone free agent coming out of the 2023 bullpen, and that's Buck Farmer. Now, interestingly enough, SpotTrack has his estimated value per year heading into 2024 at $5 million. If that's what he's going to get paid, I'm a hard pass already. But taking what you just said about ground balls, I think that eliminates him from serious contention as well.
Yeah, he had a 33% ground ball rate. Now, it's interesting because if you really dive into those numbers, Fernando Cruz had a worse ground ball rate. Lucas Sims had a worse ground ball rate. But what they did better than Buck Farmer was strike people out. Buck Farmer's strikeout rate was at 22%, which is right there at league average. And overall, his ERA was not that unlucky. In fact, it was a little bit lucky compared to what they say on XFIP. His XFIP was 4.8 to a 4.2 ERA. All of these numbers say that I think that Luke Farmer is a fine relief pitcher. He's a solid relief pitcher, but you don't pay $5 million per year for a fine relief pitcher. He was a great little surprise off the waiver wire that Nick Kroll was able to pick up. But I think if you got to pay $5 million for a fine relief pitcher, then that's an overpay.
I said this when we talked about getting a starter versus getting relief pitching. If they were going to go out and spend $17 million on a pitcher, I would much rather see them spend $6 million and get $7 million and grab a couple really lights out relievers. That's really, I think, what the right answer is. But because we're sending Alex Young down to AAA and stashing him as kind of a backup guy, one of these relief pitcher signings needs to be a lefty. They cannot do what they did last season and just have one left-handed pitcher down there in the bullpen. They've got to go get a left-hander to help out Sam Moll.
Yes, there's some lefties that I kind of been looking at who might be free agents who the Reds could definitely go after. You love having Alex Young down there in AAA and Reivar San Martin, but you want a guy you can really count on, maybe even a setup guy that's a left-hander. that could be a very, very good option. And if they're like Sam Moll is actually very good at keeping the ball on the ground. 50% of balls he allowed in play were ground balls last season. So you love to see that kind of a number. Keep that up. Get the ground balls in play, because this infield defense is going to be better. It's going to be more consistent with guys getting more playing time. There's a lot of folks out there that are like really convinced that Elly De La Cruz is just going to be an error machine at shortstop. And I don't think that's the case. I think that he just gets more focus as he moves through his career. So you keep the ball on the ground. You allow this infield that is full of athletes to just get that in their glove, throw it to first, move on. Because the biggest thing with all of this, if you look at strikeout rate and walk rate and all this other stuff, that means that the pitch counts are rising up. We want quick, efficient innings. Get us out of here. Get this amazing lineup back in the batter's box.
Well, one thing's for sure, Jeff. We don't know who they're going to sign, but we are definitely certain that in their free agent shopping, the Reds should definitely have a type. I think would be a good way to put that. They definitely should have a type. And on that note, I think that is where we should go ahead and wrap it up for the day. Get us out of here, Jeffrey.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for checking out today's Locked On Reds podcast, as we kind of looked at the bullpen, and we're going to continue to keep looking at different players that the Reds can add, and with that caveat of they got to keep the ball on the ground. And we will be with you every step of the way throughout the offseason. But tomorrow we return. Aloha Friday on a 1 p.m. Eastern start time. You get to drive the ship. We'll be talking about everything we've been looking at this week here. Favorite memories, what if moments, who the Reds can add in the bullpen, what's going on with Joey Votto. We're talking with you about that tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern time on the first edition of Aloha Live Friday here on the Locked On Reds podcast. Why is that, Steve?
Well, make sure you're here at 1 p.m. Friday. Have your Mai Tais ready. Have your Aloha shirts on. We're going to dig in and keep you locked on Reds every single day. Are you going to wear a coconut bra, Jeff?
1 p.m. Mai Tai. That sounds like a good idea, actually. And then I might wear a coconut bra.